Hey Grace,
Hey, Shawn.
how are you today?
I'm fine, thanks.
Good. I thank you for joining me yet again for part 2 of the telling of your story, your mother's story, the story of dementia is what we want our viewers to understand more about, to connect with, and that is best done by people sharing their experiences that have actually lived through it. So, welcome again and thank you. So, I'd like to start by just reviewing your background for those who perhaps did not watch the first video. Um, you are the daughter of Henry and Doretha Akins. When your mother developed dementia and needed to move in with you, you were married and had been married for approximately how long?
Let's see. I don't know. A long time.
Because you've been married total how long now?
I don't know. Let's see. 30 something.
30 some odd
Yeah,
years. Okay,
yeah.
very good. So you were married, had been married a long time.
Yeah.
You have one son, and he was in school, in college, so he was a young adult.
Yeah.
Still residing in the home, though, correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
All right. And you are the only child of your parents, and you're a girl. And that matters too, because, even when there's a boy and a girl, let's say, oftentimes the girl is still the one who leads the way in caring for the parents. Fair or not, that's the way that tends to go. So, anyway, we want your story. So I wanted to give the viewers just that backdrop of the beginning, the origin, and basically the kitchen sink, let's say, of your scenario before we get into it, okay?
Yep.
All right. So today, let's start with caregiver impact. So when your mother came to live with you, you were approximately how old?
Let's see. In my 40s.
Okay, you were in your 40s. Okay. So in our 40s, our bodies are going through this, that, and the other. So we have our own physical challenges, correct?
Just starting to get older.
Just starting to get older, starting to feel the impact, the signs and the symptoms, right? So tell us about your surgery. Let's start there. That you had this need in the journey, the 9-year journey of caring for your mother. You then had your own need for care. So tell us about that.
Right. This was more toward the end, but my mom needed more physical help by the time she had been here 8+ years or so, close to 9 years. And she didn't get up and move around a lot, so when she did get up, she needed me to physically help her up and help her walk to the bathroom or walk to her chair that she needed. And so it was more that I was, it wasn't just I was standing there and providing, structure for her. It was like I was actually lifting weight when I was moving her around. So in that time period, it was found that I needed to have a hysterectomy. So I was going to have abdominal surgery, and I was going to be out of commission from weightlifting. So probably, minimum 6 weeks, and before I was even introduced to that type of weight um, weightlifting load again. So I ended up having to find a place where she would be cared for while I was unable to care for her, because if I wasn't going to be able to lift her, she needed someone to do that. So we ended up putting her in a facility for a little bit of time because I wasn't going to be able to help.
Right, exactly.
So.
And emotionally, how did that impact you?
Well, you just, she was here in the first place because I guess we didn't feel that anyone else could care for her like family. So it was going to be the first time that I had to have outside help. So you just worry a little bit that, she's going to get good care somewhere else. And so as soon as I was able to get out and about, I'd go visit her, even though I couldn't take care of her.
Absolutely. Gotcha. So the job of being a caregiver was impactful on you physically because of the lifting.
Yep, at that point, yeah.
And over the 9-year period, what was the progression like with that? Because originally when she came, she didn't require that, right?
That's correct.
How many years in would you say that it was before you had to engage more physically?
Maybe the last 2 years or so. Yeah, she needed more help. Sometimes it was just to make sure she didn't fall, It wasn't a lot of lifting type of work. It was just, you just time, maybe. You had to be there. Hold on to her, make sure she didn't fall, that sort of thing.
Sure.
We have a lot of stairs in the house.
Yeah, you all have a tri-level house, right?
Right.
And with respect to helping her out of the bed and transitioning to the potty chair and to the bathroom, was that all a part of your scenario?
Yeah, that was more toward the end there, the last, say, 2 years maybe.
Okay. And what about the bathing and the showering and the lotioning and?
I had outside help coming in, and so they took care of most of that.
Okay. All right.
So.
Okay. So Grace, tell me what it was like, because you were a career woman, right? So you were getting up, going to work at what time in the morning?
I think I started, over the years it changed a lot.
Okay.
Sometimes I started at 5 a.m., 6 a.m., 7 a.m. And I've worked night shifts. I've started in the afternoon. I've started at 11 o'clock at night, all over the place.
Got it.
But for a long time, I'd start at 6. That was a pretty standard start time. And so the first thing I did when I would get up is go peek in her room, see if she's still in bed and not on the floor, say, because there were a few times she'd try to get up and would fall, and unless I checked on her, I wouldn't know it. So I'd check that first, and usually help her up to go to the bathroom before I got ready myself. And once she got in bed, she was good until the helper came in the morning. And then at the end of my work day, which was 3 o'clock or so, could be 4 o'clock, I'd pretty much need to get home, without too many stops on the way home.
Absolutely.
Because she'd be here, napping, and it'd be time for her to get up, and I'd want to be here when she got up. So,
So that altered what you would normally do after work because that had to be considered.
It had to be considered. I wouldn't say I normally did anything
Mm-hmm.
because that was kind of normal. It's like I knew I had to go home. I guess you do what you do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And once you got home, what did that look like?
You know, since I had been gone and, it was time for her to get up, the first thing I do is make sure she was okay and she had everything that she needed, and, we did anything that was required physically. If she needed another trip to the bathroom, or, every once in a while there's an accident, and it's like you help take care of that. And do you need a snack? I need a snack. Let's have a snack together, or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And your bathrooms, are they easily accessed? Did she have to step into the tub? Was she a bather or a person who took showers?
And she preferred showers.
Okay.
And so she started out using our hall bathroom upstairs, with a tub and a shower. And then as it got tougher to step over the tub, we moved her to using the shower that's in my bedroom, that just has the short little 4-inch curb on it, so she could more easily step into that shower, and then we replaced the shower head with the type of shower with a handle, so that was easy for all of us to use with her. And so that's how we did that. She
Absolutely.
used that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. Because modifications are needed along the way, correct?
Right. Yeah, and you can easily put like a seat in the shower, so she could sit on the seat if she wanted to.
Mm-hmm. So those were things that had to be purchased?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Tell me about family and the impact on relationships. Your son, your husband, perhaps your mother's siblings. Did she have any living siblings?
Not at that time. She didn't.
Okay.
No. Let's see.
Her husband had passed. Your dad was gone.
Yeah.
So we didn't have that
Yeah.
interaction.
Yeah. She had some nieces and nephews, and actually there's a stepdaughter of hers.
Okay.
And so they all kept in contact and would visit, on special occasions and things like that.
Okay.
And just here at home, obviously my husband was very supportive. It was his idea that she even come in the first place. So he helped out when necessary,
Mm-hmm.
but for the most part it was my mom, so it was my job. And our son, he didn't really have to do a lot, not really. But it was nice that, he was able to spend time with his grandma easily. She was in the house.
Mm-hmm.
But I think for most of that, he was in college, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So he was in and out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's been a long time in college. So.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So tell me about the overall experience, how you would characterize the experience of caring for your mom.
Well, we had a small family, basically the three of us, and I'd say pretty close, but I guess I never thought ahead of time that I would live with my mom again, once I moved out. So, never really thought about moving her in. You just maybe sort of think that, once people get older, they move into a nursing home or whatever. But she was in her 80s, early 80s when she moved in, and she, I don't know, she was struggling mentally, but not physically. It just, I don't know, it just didn't seem right to put her in a facility, you know, yet, you know. So it just sort of made sense that since it was just her, that it wasn't too much of uh, a struggle really to add her into the household. So we had a spare room, so it's like, why don't you just move into the spare room? You know, we're going to cook dinner for 2 or 3 people. What's one more person? So we thought it was worth trying out. It seemed to make sense on paper, so we thought we'd try it out, and in the end, I think it made a lot of sense.
Okay, very good. Tell me about finances. How does dementia and Alzheimer's impact family finances?
Well, it seems to impact the individual uniquely, because each of those diseases can impact a person differently. My mom tended to be more quiet, and you really almost couldn't tell what was going on in her mind because she was so quiet, and she was very pleasant, you know, in her interaction. So it was hard to recognize that she wasn't understanding everything as well as she used to unless you specifically asked her about it. But I could tell because when she first came, she would write her own checks for, say, her medications and things like that. She would even put her own medication in her pill box, you know, for the week and that sort of thing. And then I could recognize when those things were getting fuzzier for her. You know, she wasn't doing the best job in filling the pill box and more confused. And when she was writing a check, she might forget to write a check, or she might not understand the date any longer, and things like that. So, you know, it was really easy because she was here. It's like, well, just, you know, here, let me write it out for you. And then it just kind of, you know, became me doing it all the time. So, you know, those things were easier. When she's living in another place, you have a hard time recognizing when things are changing. So, I guess I don't know what else I was going to say about that. My mother-in-law, she was a little different. She was less apt to let you do things for her because of her dementia. She thought that if you wanted to touch her stuff, you wanted to do something bad to it. So she was a little more difficult to convince that we were really just trying to help. Another thing is, too, we found that it was helpful to maybe reduce the number of different banks that she was associated with. When you're younger and, you know, you can kind of stay on top of all of that, it's not a big deal. But when I'm doing it for someone else, it's like I don't want to necessarily, you know, move around to 3 different banks. It's like, let's consolidate, put everything in one place. It's just easier to keep track of, you know, since it's an additional job for me. Let's make it easier. Absolutely. So we did the same thing with my mother-in-law as best as we could. And then, you know, trying to write everything down and keep track of it that way. But it's funny how, you know, even as we're getting older, it's like, you know, what was that? What did we do over for your mom, or was that my mom? Is, it's kind of hard to keep it all straight. So,
That's right.
Keep it simple.
So that's another interesting aspect of your story, that your mother had dementia and then your mother-in-law had dementia. And so you were sandwiched between the two for how long?
Well, not very long with the two of them, because my mother was sort of nearing the end of her life when my mother-in-law was just starting to get worse, with her dementia and stuff. So, because she was even able to help out, with my mom when I couldn't leave her alone. My mother-in-law would come over and just sit with her, but at that point she probably wasn't a great help, with a lot of other things, but she was helpful in that regard. So once my mom passed, then my mother-in-law, was getting worse.
Gotcha.
So.
Gotcha. And going back to finances, so in terms of parents, what would your message be to people who are, let's say, our age? What could we do that would help our children to be able to take care of us?
Well, the consideration of making things simpler, and everyone's financial strategies are all different, but simpler is probably better to me, I think, for both parties in a way. To have possibly a financial planner, and sometimes a business, that does that can also, help out children, with parents' setups. You want to make sure, I think, that you have beneficiaries listed, on everything. We did learn that if you have like a bank account and you have a beneficiary that's, money that's outside of a probate court, if anything were to happen, because probate keeps things tied up and a little more difficult. And sorry, there was somebody outside. So you can put things that are deeded or have titles, you can put them in a trust, and that way a probate can be avoided, because deeds typically have to have something signed over, and once you die you can't sign it over, so a trust doesn't require that. It's always nice to talk about things, before it's too late, before people are incapacitated and can't tell you what they think any longer. It's good to talk things through. See, that's all that's coming to mind right now.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So going back to the physical. So we've got the physical aspect of being a caregiver. We've got the emotional aspect. We've got the financial aspect. We've got the relationship aspect. And we've got the aspect of your own personal body. So let's circle back to your experience with, well, before we get to that, let's talk about the caregiver that you were fortunate enough to find. You found a caregiver who helped you. She was a friend of the family?
She's a friend of the family, yeah. A former nurse, so she had, some medical background that didn't work in the field any longer, and sort of picked up the side job of helping elderly people. She sort of liked working with the elderly, had a great relationship with older people in general, so that was a great job for her. And so we happened to catch her when she didn't have a person to work with, and we just started kind of early in just having her come by for an hour or two and having coffee and getting to know my mom when she was, maybe just starting to slow down a little bit and maybe need some help, or we thought she would pretty, in the near future. And so they, just became acquainted with each other for a little bit, and then it just sort of developed into, her caregiver of everything that she needed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she was a very good caregiver.
Mm-hmm. So you all were super fortunate there.
Yeah, we were.
She was the one and only?
Pretty much. There was a time there, that she had a health scare of her own, or health problems of her own. And so she took a few months off for her own care. And I don't remember how exactly, but we made it without her for a little bit, and it was just more work on our part. But my mom didn't need an exorbitant amount of help at that time, so we were able to make it without her.
Mm-hmm.
But she did come back and stayed through the time that we needed her the most. So that it worked out in that regard for us.
And so she had to be paid for out of pocket?
Yeah.
Did you ever question, there's no crystal ball, right? So you don't know how long your loved one is going to live, and thereby you have no idea how long you need their money to last.
That's correct. Yeah.
How did that feel emotionally?
It's just kind of like, I think you get to the point where you just know it is what it is, and we're gonna have to make it work, and it'll be okay, and other people do it, so let's just do our best. So I think my strategy was, well, let's try to keep her home, as long as we can. And we prefer it that way anyway, so that made sense. And then if it ever gets to be too difficult for us, physically, emotionally, whatever, then at that point we would, try to find a place maybe to place her that would cost more money, and then we would spend what she had until she didn't have any more. And then, you work the system after that.
So you were fortunate in that your mother did have the money to pay for this caregiver.
Yeah, and it helped that she stayed here, basically for free. So then the money that she had coming in from Social Security and my dad's pension was enough to cover the care that she needed. And like I said, it wasn't excessive care. So it worked out. And that's the thing, it's like you never know, because we were looking into long-term care insurance policies, and it's just like, she didn't need it. Well, we need it. I don't know. It's a lot of money to pay if you don't know if you're ever going to use it. It's really a difficult decision to spend it.
So when you were looking into long care insurance for yourselves, how much were you looking at?
I don't have the papers in front of me, but I think it was maybe a policy may have been $75,000, and it seemed to maybe it would have covered maybe $300,000 of costs, but that's a pretty big risk, I'd say.
And this was, you were shopping for policies for your mom or shopping for policies for yourselves?
That's for us. Because
you're now learning through the experience with your mom that potentially we need to look into these kinds of things because our day is coming, because life is a circle.
Yeah, I think we were aware of it, but it was something that our financial planner, ran through. I think that's what they normally do, because that's an expense that could come up in your future that they want to make you aware of. And it's quite an expensive route to go. But, it's almost like a donut sort of thing. It's like if you're really rich, you don't need it. If you're really poor, you don't need it. If you're kind of in the middle, you have a little bit of money.
But not enough money for dementia.
Yeah.
Potentially.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, I think when my mom was in the facility, I think her room was like $10,000 a month.
Exactly. Who has that?
Yeah, that's
as
crazy.
A middle, your average working family.
Right. For a couple months, and then
right.
And then you're out of money.
And dementia tends to be a long goodbye.
It can be.
Yeah, it tends to be a long-term chronic illness, not something that kills you right away.
Right.
Exactly. So very important for our viewers to understand that there are financial concerns for your loved one, as well as for yourselves, that you're being confronted with, educated on, because there's no teacher like living it.
Right.
Am I right, Grace?
That's right.
There's no teacher like living it. And so you're front and center with a huge life lesson. So, yeah.
It's another reason, too, whatever difference you can make in keeping yourself healthy, hopefully you save a little money in the end.
Absolutely. Going back to your experience with your need for respite, that 6-week period. So you shopped around and you chose a place. And what happened after that?
Well, we chose a place that was, not far from home, and we visited and spoke to everyone. It seemed like it would be adequate, since you know I just take care of her here. I don't know how difficult that would be for anybody else, but we did have trouble at the facility. After I was able to go visit her, I found that they really weren't making sure that she moved around. They just kind of let her sit in a wheelchair. Um, I don't know if the facility was foreign enough to her that it bothered her and to some degree, but she had developed some sort of like bed sores on her feet, ankle area, and I don't know if it's the way they placed her in bed, if she didn't move around, if the bed was uncomfortable, I don't know, but she had never had that type of ailment here. And she had also developed kind of like a cough that I think is kind of typical to pick up in a facility with a lot of people like that, even though these were fairly active people.
But they are all sharing the air.
Yeah. So.
And we learned that in the COVID period.
Yeah.
That is a huge threat to health, given viruses.
Right. And she was older than some, and like I said.
And she wasn't moving.
And
when you're sedentary, that doesn't move the air through the lungs, which positions people to be more likely to develop pneumonia, which I did not. That was something that I've learned over time, that being sedentary, not only does it break down your muscles, diminishes your glucose utilization, because the muscle is the biggest sink that you have for glucose. And so to be sedentary definitely puts you at risk for further decline.
Exactly.
So she developed this coughing.
Yep.
And coughs are the worst. They're the worst to get rid of.
Yeah.
They annoy you all through the night and everything.
Yeah, so I contacted a physical therapy, like visiting nurse team, to see if they could come by and give her some physical therapy so she could be a little more active. And when the nurse came by just to do an evaluation on her, she's the one that noticed the sores on her feet. And so in the end suggested that maybe we just take her to the ER and get her checked out. And I guess they felt that her cough was pretty bad, and that her sores were pretty bad, that they admitted her, and she ended up staying in the hospital for about 2 weeks and really never got better, and was released after 2 weeks, and we sent her to a different facility with more care, closer care.
And what the facilities that she was in, were they memory care facilities?
No.
Okay. No. What type of facilities were they? And were they both the same?
No, I'm not sure about the names, of the types of facility, but
because they're licensed differently. So some facilities are actually licensed as foster care homes. Some are licensed as memory care. And oftentimes the lower level licensing does not have a requirement for patient to staffing ratios. And your people generally use the word nursing home, but nursing homes are required to have patient to staffing ratios, and they're required to have skilled care like RNs and physicians, and they are more critical care type situations. So I'm just curious as to.
Yeah, I would not put the first facility under a nursing home licensing type.
Okay.
Even though they had different levels within their complex.
Okay. So the area that your mom was in was.
It was.
Because I'm assuming that what you're saying is that within the complex, that there was probably a skilled nursing care section, maybe a memory care section, maybe assisted living section. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
That's how I understand it.
Okay.
I didn't visit all the areas, but I know they had different areas, because when we signed up, we tried to match her up to sort of
what
areas she needed to be in, and probably should have been in a more staff assisted area than what she was in.
Okay.
Because she seemed to be a little neglected. And I guess I didn't sit with her all the time, but it's not the same. Because I did take care of her, and to them, not sitting with you all the time is really you're on your own. So she didn't get a lot of the care that I think she needed. But even when she developed issues, they still didn't really, bring it to anyone's attention.
And speak to us about your observation of the water.
Oh yeah, one day I went there to visit her, and she was sitting in the wheelchair in her room, dressed, just sort of sitting there, and there was a cup of water on a table that was probably 6 feet away, and they have the straw in it with the paper on the end of the straw to prove that it's fresh. And so I just kind of looked at her and looked at the water, and it's like, are you thirsty? It was probably 3 or 4 in the afternoon, and she said, yeah. So I realized that she wasn't able, to move her wheelchair over to get the water, and they didn't recognize or understand that she couldn't get to the water. So yeah, that's the place that I put her. So
we don't know.
Yeah, we don't know.
We don't have a crystal ball.
Yeah.
We're just doing the best that we can.
Yeah.
So, and the old saying, your best is never good enough.
Yeah. Yeah. And,
especially when it comes to putting her in the hands of other people.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
But that's the conversation that we're having today, is that life comes up, and you needed surgery, and you needed assistance. And there were policies in place, money in place for you to be able to access the assistance that you needed. And you should have gotten what you were paying for. $10,000 a month, did you say?
Not for that facility.
Okay.
But the nursing facility was $10,000.
And this particular facility was thousands.
Yeah, it was 5 to 6 probably.
5 to 6,000. So that's the point that we're making, is that The money is being paid, and you're not getting what you're paying for.
Right.
And that's a fallacy on their end, not on yours. But it's something that impacts you, though.
Yeah.
Yes, because it's impacting your precious mother.
Yeah.
So when it comes to policy and practice, for example, these water cups that they use in the hospital as well as in the facilities tend to be styrofoam.
Mm.
And the styrofoam, you cannot see the level of the water. Now, clearly, with the fact that the paper is on the end of the straw, there's been no attempt to provide her with the water. Now, why might that be? Because legally, I'm assuming that they're required to deliver water, but they're not required to make certain the person drinks a certain number of ounces. They're not measuring output. So oftentimes anything that is not required by law is not statistically documented, because the insurance payout doesn't require that documentation, nor does the law require the documentation. Thereby, it's not being documented. Thereby, it's willy-nilly as to whether or not it's being done. And these kinds of things are important for us to understand, so that if we have the inclination or relationships with people who are politically involved, that these kinds of things can be brought to their attention. Because again, laws tend to be met because they're required in order to have a business. So people are going to be more compliant with what helps them to make their money. So we want to bring the attention of our viewers to this simple, seems like a very simple kind of thing, but it's huge to the quality of life. Because how often do you drink throughout the day, Grace? Would you guess? Sips of water.
Yeah. Dozens. Yeah.
Absolutely. All throughout the day, to just feel comfortable. Your body is asking that, asking for that provision. And so to imagine, anyone being in that situation where they can't lift the cup. So these are things that, again, I want to ask our viewers, if you have any relationships with any legislators, any committees that help to influence what legislators are aware of, then bring this simple measure to their attention, because it's critical. The next point with this is that these people are being given the medications. They're going to give them, and they're going to give them exactly, generally speaking, as prescribed. So they're going to get some water at that point. But we all know that water intake rinses toxins from the body. So if you're not being provided with water all throughout the day, and even throughout the night, people are thirsty, then your body becomes toxic. And that's a threat to your life. So the issue of having these cups be clear, and the issue of having there be some accountability for the delivery of these fluids needs to be in place. Otherwise, we're paying this big money, but the life is not being supported to that level of cost in particular. So the other thing I wanted to bring to the attention of our viewers is that when your mother first came to live with you, or perhaps before, but you knew that she was taking blood sugar medication, that she had diabetes. But you had never cared for diabetes. You knew she was doing the finger sticks. You knew she was receiving the medication. And yet, when you go with her to doctor's appointments, the doctor doesn't explain anything to you about diabetes. Um, he doesn't offer you, was it a he or she? Your doctor? Your mother's doctor?
Pardon me?
Was your mother's doctor a he or a she?
Oh, it was a male.
Okay. So, and he doesn't recommend that you go to a dietetics class or anything to learn about feeding your mother in accordance with her diabetic condition. And this is your first rodeo. You don't know this.
Mm-hmm.
You're not diabetic yourself. And this was not a part of your mother's discussion with you. Am I correct?
Right.
So then, even when she's in the facility, they know what her medications are. And even there, they don't say anything to you about the need for her to be on a diabetic diet, or that they're putting on her on a diabetic diet, or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
So this is another piece that was sorely missed in her care. And diabetes is connected to dementia because it impairs the vascular system. So thereby, it impairs the circulation of the blood. Thereby, the blood carries both oxygen and nutrients. So wherever the biggest impairment is, if that happens to be going up to your blood and your vessels are more so damaged in that region, then the brain is not going to get the circulation and the oxygen and the nutrients that it needs. So it starves and it dies and it suffocates. And so there was a missed opportunity for you to be educated and for your mother to be optimally cared for through diet. And so another point that our viewers need to understand for their own well-being and for those that they may be caring for now or may be caring for in the future. Have we missed anything, Grace, with respect to your journey, what you learned from it, its impact on you?
Well, I guess just in general, like I said, it wasn't something that I thought that I would ever end up doing. You just don't hear about a lot of parents, being taken care of by their kids. I think they're out there, but I don't know, it's not real mainstream. But
why do you think that is? Do you think that's an American cultural thing that has impacted us?
Yeah, I think it's pretty cultural. That's how it feels to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that, everybody does it. It's like you move out when you're 20 or whatever, and you don't come back. And your parents, once they get so old that they're having trouble, they can't take care of themselves, they move into a facility. That's just what everybody does, but it doesn't have to be that way. If you look at other cultures, there's a lot of cultures where the families stay together and help each other. The older members of the family help raise the kids, when the parents are working a lot in their younger days and stuff like that. And it helps both groups or all the groups, all the ages. It's good for the kids, it's good for the parents, it's good for the grandparents, to stay active and actually have a valued purpose in life. So I just think it worked out pretty well for us. And I think, it's it's family, and you learn a lot when you spend time together. And as you get older, you think more about people. And I think it was just really worth it.
Yeah.
Even if in the end she would have ended up somewhere else because it got too difficult, we still spent a lot of time together.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And that brings up a part that we missed, and that is work. How did your employer support you during this time?
My employer was extremely supportive. Um, I they told me, whatever I really needed to do, they'd work with me. I could leave to take my mom to appointments, and my coworkers would cover me, and the boss said it was okay. And I tried to reciprocate, if it was required by my coworkers. We all kind of worked together as a team, but as a corporation, they allowed me to do it. And yeah, that was really important.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. I remember you also saying that during this time that GM was on strike or they had filed bankruptcy. There was something that gave you some angst and concern with respect to finances.
Right. It was the 2008, I don't know, financial crisis. And GM filed for bankruptcy, and I worked at an assembly plant, so we were reducing our shifts. We went from 3 shifts to 2 shifts to 1 shift, so we needed less people, and I wasn't sure if I would have a job. And so, I sort of laughed about it, but with my mom staying with us, she had a pension and Social Security coming in. It's like, well, I might have to live off my mom for a little bit. So it didn't come to that, but yeah, for a while I thought she might have to help me.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
And again, that just speaks to the circle of life.
Right.
And it speaks to how, even though you've got one burden, a huge burden going, it doesn't stop other burdens from coming your way.
Oh, absolutely.
And that people who are standing in the gap and taking care of loved ones are oftentimes being oppressed and concerned and worried about other things as well.
Right.
That threaten the stability and the security that you're providing to your parent. So a very important point to bring up, and so I'm glad that was remembered. If you were to speak to organizations within your city, fraternities, sororities, civic clubs, churches, whatever they may be, what would be your dream if you were coordinating it right now based on what you know, and you were talking to groups about dementia and being a caregiver and how they might be able to be of support? What would you say?
And how they could be of support.
Like educating them based on your experience, because you've now gained knowledge through this experience. What would it be helpful for them to know about being helpful to people who are in these situations right now?
I'm not really sure. Maybe it just sort of worked out where, you don't have a lot of real outside people coming in, but um, you mentioned respite, it always helps to um, be supportive with time. It's like if someone needs to go out to dinner, just for some relaxation, from stress, um, sitting with someone, but you don't kind of want just strangers doing it, but maybe a fellow church member or something like that. We did have some people from our church stop by, and visit on occasion, which was nice and supportive. And I don't know about, local city things, but maybe like on a state government level, it's nice to have support of financial options and things for families where caregivers are, if you're a family caregiver, you're not compensated in any way. And I know AARP has talked a lot about trying to help with that situation, but as we would sort of look around to say, well, is there any policy that would help pay for care, and it's like, well, they'll pay for, say someone to come in and help with this, but I do that now and they won't pay me. So how is that right? It's a job for me too. So that I could see, more help in that area, I guess.
This is an excellent point you bring up, because women are already twice as likely to be living in poverty. The jobs that we're attracted to performing don't tend to pay as high. Then we're 2/3 of the dementia cases. I bet we're 90% of the people caring for the loved ones. We can't be at work and making the money to take care of ourselves and be at the house not making the money, which then jeopardizes our loved ones because they either have to be alone or they have to be with people, and we don't know what the people are doing. So this is a stackable, compounding threat to our survival as women. So I'm glad that you brought this point up. All people have to make money in order to finance their lives. So why then would there be a question mark, a hesitancy of any sort about the need to pay whomever is doing the job? Because that makes certain that they can be there to do the job. If you don't make money here taking care of mom, you got to be out there making money. It's such a hardship for women, a hard spot to be in. And so again, women and men should be aligned in speaking out loudly and clearly about the need for all caregivers to be paid to be there to do the job.
Agreed.
Mm-hmm.
I think, personally, I think you get better care from a family member or friend even, so.
Absolutely. They know you best.
Yeah.
And they know if you like to wear socks
Yeah.
to go to bed.
And you're familiar to them.
All of that.
Mm-hmm.
You know their food preferences, culturally and otherwise. And so, and if men were primarily doing this job, it would be compensated. And so, again, women need to be very aligned and not at odds and not trying to prevent other women from being paid to do this important job, because I've seen that as well. It's wrong. It undermines us. It undermines our kids, and it undermines our parents, because again, you got to bring in money to keep everything stable and secure. So, very good point. Anything else that you've run into during this experience?
No, I think that's about it.
Okay, all right. Well, the circle of life is real. It is spoken to very clearly in the Bible and in the Lion King. And yet, somehow, our culture has capitalized on convincing us that no, the circle of life is not real. Children are not responsible for taking care of their parents. Parents are responsible for taking care of their kids, but nope, you're not responsible for taking care of your parents. And we all know that that is ludicrous. And your story shows us and underscores that when we put our parents into the hands of other people, they will not be cared for properly. They will be housed in facilities that look nice and ugly things are going on, such as neglect. Now, when the average person neglects, they're breaking the law and they're punished. But facilities all over this country are known to be neglecting while receiving thousands of dollars. The circle of life is real. We must stand by it and stand for it and press our culture to accept it and respect it. And you've done that, Gracie. You have done that, and I know that Mrs. Doretha Akins and her husband, your father, Mr. Henry Akins, I know that they would be so proud of you. I know that your mother experienced it directly. I'm sure that she was very pleased with the daughter that she raised. And I know that she knows that you did the very best that you could do. And as my mother used to say, that's all the Lord requires. So thank you so much for sharing your story.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Absolutely. Good job. If everyone would please like this video, please comment, subscribe, and share as we endeavor to enlighten everyone regarding dementia and its impact on women, children, husbands, families, its impact on our world. Bye now.